in the air, once it's down on the surface, how it changes. I'm not going to get into the science of it too much. It's really just to explain some of the terminology that they use, particularly in the Avalanche bulletins as well. So we'll be probably about half an hour, 40 minutes of that. A little bit of chat on weather, but maybe just more sort of fundamentally is why we get certain snowpack on the coast versus a rocky snowpack, and why we get different things happening in those two different snowpacks. We'll go through, have a look at how we access the Avalanche bulletin and what some of the terminology means in that. And then at the end of the day, we'll do probably about 50 minutes, an hour sort of session on just getting started on sort of rescue scenarios. And then in the field again, we'll try and work on terrain. If we've got, like I said, if we've got good visibility, then the area we're going to has got a lot of interesting terrain to look at around there. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that we can that it's clear tomorrow. We'll also be going out doing some tests, so a bit of digging in the snow, just to see what layers are in there and how one layer is attached to another. And then just trying to sort of bring all that together, so with all our observations and what we've looked at the snow is, we're trying to figure out, do we agree with the hazard evaluation that the bulletins, the Avalanche bulletins come up with? Maybe sort of a scenario on how to move across a slope, if it was avalanche terrain. Now saying that, we're actually not going into avalanche terrain tomorrow. Probably pleased to hear, but maybe not. First of all, we don't have time. There's so much to cover tomorrow that really we're probably going to be travelling maybe 500 or 600 metres from the parking lot, and that's about it really. Just want to try and get up a little bit higher from the cars. Because we've got so much to get through, we can't go too far. And also, it's kind of, that's what this course is not about, moving through avalanche terrain. So, despite the fact we're doing a scenario, it's probably going to be a bit more contrived. We'll be just imagining that we're crossing an avalanche-prone slope. And then, usually at the end of the day, I kind of sort of finish off with one or two scenarios. So, just be literally throwing the group into something that we've set up. So maybe looking for multiple beacons, doing some probing, just to sort of see how that all fits together. So that's kind of the plan for tomorrow. Any questions? Everyone's on the right course? Just some logistics for today. In a moment, I've got to go through some waivers. Just to chat through the waivers just now. There's two of them. One's a Yamnuska waiver. The other one's a CA, Canadian Avalanche Association waiver. So, although this course is being provided by Yamnuska, it's actually a syllabus put on by the CA, so they'd like the waivers doing. For the Yam waiver, it's just a case of signing, reading through it, make sure you understand it, and then a signature there, initials here, and then if you can sign where it says guest signature. Where it says witness, if you can leave that, and I'll be witnessing it. Well, myself and Craig actually. Don't worry too much about the client's information because we've got that. But the bottom box there is actually important, and it's just kind of if anyone's got any ailments or injuries that you think we should know about. And if you can just, if there's nothing wrong with it, if you can just strike it out or put not applicable or NA in there, that'd be fantastic. CA one, pretty similar, initials here and here. The course is an AST-1 course. Where it says 2, you just put in Yamnuska, the name of the company. And then on the back, again, if you can just sign the where it says guest, I'll witness it. Okay. So what I'll do is maybe pass the Yam ones back. And then I'll bring the CA ones around in a moment. Whereabouts some Wales? Okay. My brother's pretty close to the marathon. Oh yeah. Yeah. Does anyone need a pen or?
Very cool.
Okay, so basically it means you've been out for the day, maybe sledding, snowshoeing, ice climbing, and you get to the top of the slope that you were sort of planning on going down. I put ski or ride there, but it could be walking down or whatever. What I'd like you to do is maybe either in your table group or the table can turn around and work with the group behind, so it's groups of 6. It's just kind of brainstorm all the things you'd like to know about that slope before you go down there. It's all the factors you think you should consider to come up with a hazard evaluation for that slope. So just write down what comes up. There won't be any silly ideas, and if you say something, it might actually prompt someone to go, okay, well, how about this or that. This last sentence, although it's really important, let's not talk about that just now, because to me there's 2 decisions here. First of all, I want to come up with a hazard evaluation for that slope, and if it's too dangerous to go down, then I should go somewhere else. So safe travel methods would be, okay, well, I think it's okay, so what we're going to do is go down it one at a time, we're going to stay to the side, we're going to reroute down there. But that's after you've made the decision to, the slope's reasonable to go onto. So that makes sense. Yeah. So we'll talk about that later. So really just now we just want to talk about the factors. And a little clue there is, remember you've been out for the day, so you've been able to gather information as you've been travelling around. Okay. So yeah, if you want to work in table groups or turn around and work with the group behind, you can introduce yourself to them. And I don't sort of each one right now, but maybe each table can just shout out one of the things they came up with. And I'll just put it up on this on the sheet here. Now, kind of what I've got here is an idea I stole from these people. It's just called a bullseye approach. So all the information you wrote down would come somewhere in this circle, but some of it to me really gives me a lot of insight into the hazard, and we'll see if people got those, we'll fill that in. Just because I write something at the bottom or the top doesn't mean it's good or bad. I'll just sort of spread it out here, but there are a few things in here which really tell me there is a sort of high hazard on that particular day. So one from you folks.
Oh, we got high winds is the first one. I just clicked on.
Okay, so
more chance of triggering.
And with the wind, so you said high winds or strong winds. What else would you want to be thinking about with the wind? So
the slope behind you and over the top.
Okay, so is it strong enough, and is it moving snow around?
Yeah.
And then the other thing?
Direction.
Yeah, good. So which way is it blowing? Because if it's blowing, is it blowing and loading snow onto the slope, or is it blowing snow off the slope? So strength and direction. Don't worry about writing these down. I've got a handout in a minute. I can give you with all the things I used. I just didn't want to give you it right now. All right, you guys?
The weather conditions for the day?
So what else with weather? So this is part of weather, isn't it? So
if the temperature, if it's been super cold or really warm, if it's been snowing all day.
Okay, good. So temp and preset. So to me, that's what weather is, isn't it? It's these 3 things really. That's it. So what the wind's doing, temperature. Are you more concerned about temperature falling or rising as far as? Rising. Yeah, so we often think about the temperatures going up, particularly if it's going really quickly or it's going up above freezing. That has a major effect on the snow. And also, is it precipitating? So is it snowing? Is it raining? So, good. is.
Has the slope been in the sun or the shade all day?
Okay, so it's going to be kind of a sort of a weather factor, but also it's going to be the direction the slope faces as well. So we call that slope aspect. So is it north facing? Is it west facing? So it's going to get the sun in the afternoon if the sun's out. Okay, you guys?
We had complexity of the slope, so steepness,
Okay, so
whether it's in a valley, and the angle of steepness,
so
And also if it was open or if there were trees
Trees.
on it or.
yeah.
okay, so slope angle. So trees or rocks, we
Yeah.
often call those anchors. So they're
Yeah.
anchors. Okay.
How about the type of snow you've been walking all the way up to the summit on? Is it crusty? Is it
Okay. So
sticky? Is it soft? Fluffy?
good. So, good.
How about if you've heard any other avalanches?
Trying to found.
Who had that in their groups?
That's obvious, yeah.
Good. Would you agree that's a pretty good clue? And if avalanches have been occurring on slopes, same angle, aspect and elevation that you're going to stand at the top of, then really you don't need to be doing any of this. You should be going somewhere else. And it's kind of all, in the past, I've talked to quite a few people who've been caught in avalanches, and it's amazing, they say, well, yeah, we actually saw avalanches earlier in the day, or we heard them. It's like, well, didn't that mean anything?
Condition of the group?
Yeah, okay, so I'll just finish off with this. So this is a big clue for sure. If you get to see them, then great. If you're hearing them, then you should be, you can't tell what slopes they're going on, but it should definitely get your spidey senses up and how that affects you.
So visually too, I guess, if it looks like there's been an avalanche.
Yeah, good. So, this would be a big clue. The other one I sort of look at is if I can see avalanche debris. Now, it's kind of, I put a question mark there because sometimes the avalanche debris could have been there for a couple of weeks, or maybe it has just happened, and sometimes it's actually hard to tell. I think the important thing is you're looking out for it, and it's like, well, that could have just happened, so, how's that affecting my decisions now? So, it is a little bit awkward to tell how old it is, but I think it's important that we're looking for it.
Yeah, we had talked about, if it looked like the trees, like there's a picture in the book, right, where trees are actually hit.
Okay.
I'm thinking, okay, if it's obvious there's been avalanche sometime at some point.
Yeah, good. So, we call that maybe history. So does it have a history of avalanching? And like you said, that would be like trees missing in a forest,
Right.
Maybe damaged trees, things like that. That works fine if the avalanche is coming down into the trees. But if we're dealing in an alpine situation, some aspects of the slope.
What about cornices at the top of the slope?
Yeah, good. So cornices. And some of this terminology, if you haven't heard of it, I'll be explaining it more. So cornices. Maybe a couple more.
What's at the bottom of your slope? Does it drop off a 1,000-foot cliff, or does it just kind of cruise out into a nice valley?
Okay, so
Like if you went for a ride, where do you end up?
Okay, so-
Bottom of a 1,000-foot cliff.
yeah, so what's the consequence, but also the shape of the slope as well. So does it have cliffs? When we talk about shapes, what are the ones that we often
Shoots and bowls?
Okay, so now I often sort of think, is it a uniform slope or is it convex or concave? And again, we'll talk about that.
you're lucky enough to be somewhere busy, right, there might be tracks from previous people down the slope.
Okay, so let's call that slope usage, so as already used. This is actually a really interesting one because just because you see tracks in the slope doesn't mean it's a sign of intelligent life. And we got some footage later of, it's pretty cool actually, there's some sledders. Already haven't been on a slope and someone else triggers it, so we'll talk about that for sure.
What about having an escape plan? So if you actually are on the slope, can you get out of an avalanche?
Yeah, no, that's really important. Remember, that would probably be the next decision. So first of all, I've got to come up with, should I be going on it or shouldn't I? And then you're right, like that would come into my sort of safe travel concepts, which we'll talk about later. Just, I know you folks got lots more there, but we'll keep moving along. The other one that's a big one for me is if I'm getting cracking in the snow and wolfing. And again, I'll sort of chat through this later, but it's the noise of the snow collapsing, so literally it's
Underneath the gate?
We've had, a few people.
So when you get the wump, is that underneath? Where it's collapsing underneath?
As you're stepping on it.
Yeah, so it's telling you there's a weak layer in there. And the noise, they're actually not too sure where the noise comes from. It's either the compression or it's the sound of the snow breaking. But
especially with snowshoes, so
yeah, it could be anything. Snowshoes, skiing.
It's something called an avalanche that comparison.
Yeah, and really, this is a huge sign of instability. Like Craig said, if it's happening on the flat, then great. But if it happens that's actually...
Well, it gives you a good warning not to go up.
Exactly. Yeah, it's telling you there's something going on then. And then cracking, particularly on a sort of like a little side slope, if you're walking along and you're getting shooting cracks in there. So those would be, all this is important, but these are the big, to me, the big ones that stand out there. Okay. Like I said, we could probably, there's loads more in there, but we'll move on. I'm not sure what sort of learner you are, but for me, I kind of like things, lists and orderly, and otherwise I kind of forget things. And to me, this looks kind of chaotic. And it may be fine for some people, but I find it a little bit tricky to look at. So what I kind of come up with, and it's not really my idea, but is a list of things. So who's that? Pat, who's being charged of the lights? It's just those two searches there. And I'll pass these handouts. So this is just a copy of that slide there. So you can make notes on this if you need to, folks. So pass these out. So I kind of sort of think about this as pieces of a jigsaw or a puzzle that we need to figure out. So there's a bunch of stuff in there, but I'll maybe describe the way I kind of break it down. So at the top there, I've got avalanche activity and avalanche debris. And I've got slides, a number of slides for each of these topics. So we'll talk about them in more detail. But just to give you an idea of how I've laid this out. So at the top here, in the bullseye, we've got the big clue, and then we talked about avalanche debris already. And then on this row, then I've put in everything to do with the terrain. So these are all the questions I ask myself about the terrain. Is it avalanche terrain? On this line, it's everything to do with the snowpack. And on this one, it's everything to do with the weather. So, and again, I just stole that from those from the book that was showed a while ago. So this question would be, is it avalanche terrain, yes or no? And I'll go through all of those. Could the snow slide? These are the things you'd be thinking about. And is the weather contributing to instability? So you'd be looking at those. Cornices I've kind of put in here, but this is actually, cornices are a combination of or a function of all three of those things. So it depends on the terrain, depends on the type of snow, and also the wind direction as well. So it's kind of a combo of those. And then the rest of it is important information, but I kind of put that in the miscellaneous section. How many of those things on that, in the sort of miscellaneous bit, should have been done before you go out?
Well, the fitness of the group should know where you're going with.
Okay,
All of it, really.
Yeah.
quite a few of them, yeah. There's a few in there that you might not know about, like you may not know whether the slope's already been skied on or sledded down. You might, because someone may have told you, yeah, it's been, that thing's been tracked out all winter. No, I've never seen anyone using that. This one, options. This is kind of, that'll be part of your planning stage, so options or alternatives. So do you have other alternatives other than the slope you're going to? Like you mentioned, this part of it. Ideally, you know the group you're going out with. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but ways around that is not to go and do the longest trip you can think of the first day in complete strangers. As far as it's guiding, if I'm running a 5-day course, the first day is kind of a shakedown day just to get to know people, figure out if the gear's working, do a bit of a ski, or find out people can ski. Sometimes people can't. Just work out all those kinks, and then the next day we put in a bit of a tour, and then as the week progresses, we get longer. And you can use exactly the same thing in your own activities as well. So until people are working well together and they know each other and things. Yeah, so I'd say a lot of those things, they're actually done before you go out. We'll talk in more detail about those. Any questions initially on any of that? So, like I said, the plan is to go through each of those topics and expand them some more. And as we're going along, folks, if you do have questions, just shout out. It's a small enough group that we can do that. Okay, so avalanche activity. We spoke about the significance of that and how important it is to as far as sort of hazard evaluation, decision making. So here's an avalanche heading off down this slope. We're going to talk about types of avalanche later on, but just to let you know now, this is a slab avalanche. So a big slab of snow is all released at the same time and is heading off down the slope. And that first video we saw, that was a slab release as well. And so giveaway with that is this wall that's left behind at the top. It's called a crown wall. So where the avalanche is broken away, it leaves this wall at the top there, and then this thing's heading down slope. So even if this wasn't occurring, and we didn't have, there was no crown wall here. Looking at that photograph, what would indicate that probably is avalanche terrain? What else?
No trees at the bottom of the runout.
Okay, so just some bushes in here, but there's no trees. Now, this could be a function of it being in the alpine, but there's a few things growing here, but there's nothing much here.
The steepness of it.
Sorry?
The steepness.
Okay, so the angle, so it looks steep enough.
It's a shoe.
Okay, so the shape of it, gully feature. Doesn't, just because it's a gully or an open slope, doesn't sort of dictate whether it's going to avalanche or not, but features like this, they do tend to catch the snow quite well.
It's on the sunny side.
Okay, so it's in the sun, good, yeah.
Looks like there's more cracks here, right?
Good, yeah. Well done. So can you see these crown wheels up in here? So there and there. And if you look down the bottom of this, you can actually see the remnants of debris as well. Now, this is one of the ones where it's probably hard to tell how old the debris is, but looking at that, let's say it's avalanche and then it's been covered up by some more snow. So the age of it would kind of be dictated the last time it snowed and things. But at least, you know, we're looking for that and trying to sort of figure
It
out.
looks like that, right on that ridge there was, is that a crown right on,
Yeah.
right now, right
On
on
the
this,
far
right
right.
there?
Yeah,
Like at
nice.
the bottom, it looks like there's a snow pile at the
Yeah.
bottom.
Yeah, it looks like all those.
An old Avalanche.
Yeah. So crown walls are right the way across. So, you know, we talked about, is it steep enough to avalanche or is it avalanche terrain? The answer is yes for that. Whether this is, that would be, like this, there's no indicators there, but I'd be pretty suspicious about that. And that would be, really a function of how steep it is. You know, is it steep enough to slope? We wouldn't really know until we got a real closer look. So, but definitely this stuff in here looks steep enough as well. Okay, very good. So, kind of one of the aims of today, and we get into tomorrow, is really getting to start looking at terrain in a different way, just like we've been doing here. I could have just put that photograph up, oh, it's a pretty avalanche, and then move on to the next one. But actually, there's a ton of information in there, and that's kind of what we want to try and develop is the way we look at things and look at the clues there. So, some really good stuff came up there. It's in the sun, so that may have triggered it. What else can we see that's been happening in this terrain?
Just to the left of the current avalanche, are those cracks, sort of longitudinal cracks on the left-hand side of it?
Just in here?
Yeah.
No, this is interesting actually. They're not cracks, but it is actually something I was just about to talk about and get you to focus. So, what does it look like has been happening?
Layers?
Yeah, wind. Yeah, so this has been wind affected. We kind of get these ripples, or these, this wind etching on the snow. You can kind of see a bit of it in here as well. What other evidence do we have of wind action?
Oh, on the right-hand side, you can see, if you go straight up,
Yeah.
yeah, it looks like it's blowing from left to right,
Yeah, good.
right?
Yeah. So it looks like on the ridge here where it's been windy, and in here in some ways, but there the snow's actually been blown away from it. And you're quite right. You know, I'd look at that and I'd be saying, well, it looks like the wind's been blown from left to right, maybe even towards us a little bit as well. So it's been kind of blowing over the hill, but in this direction. And that would make total sense with the way what's happened here. So this area is in the shelter or the lee of the wind, so that's where we're going to get greatest accumulation. On this side, the avalanche hasn't run out into here, and maybe that's because the snow had been stripped away, hadn't been built up there. But it would have landed in here, and in here, and in here, and all of these areas on this side would have been blown clear of snow.
So are those signs of where the wind direction is, of how it...
Yeah, it would give us an indicator. So if we didn't see this going on, it'd be like, well, this looks like it's a lee aspect. But also, this effect, if the wind blows across there, we call that cross-loading as well. So each of those ridge features gives some protection from the wind. So the wind blows, and it drifts snow into here, and it blows over the next ridge, and it drifts it in there. So you'll actually read that terminology quite a bit in the bulletins. Is cross-loading or cross-wind loading? That's what that means.
To your earlier point, though, that you were making on the left side of where the avalanche is?
Yeah.
So what's actually is it wind causing that too?
Yeah. Yeah. So you know when you go out, the wind's been affected, and you kind of get these wind ripples on the snowpack.
Oh, so we're seeing those are the ripples?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be like almost like etching on the snow, whereas maybe the snow fell and then it got picked up and blown elsewhere. So just kind of highlight what we're talking about there. So the wind's blowing, say, this way. This is our mountain. This is the windward side on this side, and then this is the leeward side, just in here. So the wind blows, and a little bit like, if you're out in the wind, you want to get some protection, you get in behind a wall or whatever. It's protected here, and this is where the snow will settle. The other sort of thing that will perhaps happen as well is if it's the wind's blowing this way, so you'll actually get these cornices forming at the top. And this is kind of what they look like actually. So the thing will build and build, the snow's blowing and landing on the end. And eventually these cornices can get overloaded by more snow or sunshine. They land on this slope that's already had snow loading on it, and this is a pretty good way of triggering slides as well. So those are cornices, and we'll talk a little bit more about cornices in a minute. Excellent. And then the last one, what do you think triggered that slide?
Temperature?
Yeah, so two ways of triggering avalanches are either natural triggers, and that's going to be all our wind things. So, quite right. Sunshine. That's the only one I can see. Doesn't look like it's windy. You can't see if there's wind blowing around. It's not snowing. So, you know, the only natural trigger could have been temperature. I've got a hunch it's actually human triggered this one because it's kind of convenient that they had the camera on this thing. So probably what they did is they flew around, threw an explosive charge out, and then took some photographs. They do that a lot. Heli ski, cat ski operations. They'll actually do a lot of control work, but you know, for national parks, unless it's threatening roads or whatever, they don't go and control it. So we have to.
Heli skiing guides they're okay. They can just do it without telling anybody. They're going to watch the slopes.
It's in their sort of tenure of land, so they can do anything more. You wouldn't get away with it in a national park, but and they're kind of doing it. You know, it's not just a way of making their area safer, but they actually input that, or they send that information to the people who write the bulletins as well. So it's good.
Do animals have any inclination to be safe, or is it random?
I think animals got more sense than we do.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some people they say they do, but I've also heard stories about, you know, come springtime, like herds of sheep or deer or elk actually being found in avalanche debris. And they do trigger them as well. It's just unless you actually see it, you don't know how much that goes on. I know the bears actually is a pretty good place to go and find meat. I actually had a friend who almost got caught in an avalanche triggered by some rabbits or some hares. They startled these and they ran up the slope, and one of them ran onto the slope and actually triggered an avalanche. You had to run away from it. Not the hare.
So Steve, like you talked about, obviously where we would think there's avalanche first in this slide. Is there anywhere in this slide that there would be noticed or would be safe to locate? I don't see.
You know, you probably, if you could get up to this ridge, then going up in here would probably that'd be all right. I'd be a bit suspect about dealing with this.
Right on the ridge itself.
Once you're on the ridge, yeah. But this would be the hard bit to get to. This one would be a big question mark on this. Like, basically, you know, I've got a really unstable snowpack, so I have to be sure that this terrain wasn't steep enough to slide. So, without knowing more about it, I wouldn't be venturing onto that. It would be one of those. It would be definitely on the fence decision making. And if you wanted the safest answer, then I wouldn't go onto any of those slopes.
Well, that's kind of nice.
Yeah, I think that would probably be the way to go. So there's a few more pictures of this slide. Too much more about it.
Is this local?
It'll be out in BC, so I can't remember. Do you remember where Chris works?
Trying to figure out where he works.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like central BC.
What's this one?
Yeah. So that's, then you can see how far this one's run. It's kind of run across the valley floor, and then it looks like it's running up this side of the ridge as well. So big slope there. So that's avalanche activity. Avalanche debris. Kind of started talking about the difficulty of sometimes dating it, but I think the point is here is you're looking for it. So this is we'll talk more later about this, but this is another type of avalanche, and this is a loose snow or single point release. So it starts at a single point and then fans out in some inverted V shape. So pretty much to me there's two types of avalanche. There's slabs and there's loose snow slides. There's some other terms that get used as well, but that's the ones I'm thinking about. You can see some debris in here. Looks like it's been covered up by another snowfall. So this is Avalanche. This terrain is steep enough to slide, but this depth is a bit older. The other one to sort of note in here is these effects in here, these pinwheels or roller balls.
Excuse me a minute, can we just move the...
Oh, sorry. Sorry. It was too quiet. How much of that did you miss? These pinwheels or roller balls, and I just use those as another clue to tell me things that maybe changing in the snowpack. And sometimes you'll see these occurring even before avalanches happen. So again, we'll chat about that later, but that's what those are. So let me get into the next row, everything to do with the terrain. So what aspect is the slope, so what direction does it face? And we spoke about leeward, windward and cross-loading. So which way, in this photograph, which way is the wind being blown? Yeah, right to left. So you see the trees that have been in the wind here, no snow on them here, it's a bit more sheltered, but the main thing is these cornices that are formed along the ridge, and you can see the flutings in the snow here. And this person here is kicking this lump of cornice off. And so, some people refer to knocking a piece of cornice off as a backcountry bomb. So we can't throw explosives, but if we can knock a piece of cornice onto a slope, there's probably like a ton of snow there. That's going to tell me things whether it triggers the slope or not. You think that's a dangerous thing to do?
Weakens the slope. If it doesn't go, wouldn't it weaken it? Yeah.
It might do. Yeah, for sure.
You don't know who's at the bottom of the slope.
Yeah, so first of all, making sure there's no one underneath there. Do you think that's what they're doing is kind of risky?
Yeah.
How do you know how big the piece is going to come off?
Sorry?
How do you know how big the piece it's going to come off?
Exactly, yeah. So I think, well done, you've all passed the risk assessment there. So yes, this is a hazardous thing to do, and I never do it lightly. Like Mike said, I'll make sure there's no one below. I try and choose to do this on quite small slopes, so the consequence, if I get it wrong, is not disastrous. So, a slope this big can have a bit of a cornice on it, and by knocking some snow off, might give you an idea of what's going on there.
You can probably cut it a bit safer too.
Yeah.
Instead of standing on it, you can get beside it or something, or cut it somehow.
Yeah, and that's, you can actually buy cornice cutting devices, just a piece of wire. I've used a piece of cord, kind of throw it over the cornice, and then two people can just like cheese wire it off. If you ever do that, don't wrap your hand around just in case. But really, I think the main advice here is just treat cornices with a lot of caution and avoid it if you're not sure. Because what they do, they have a tendency to fracture much further back than you think. And there's been numerous times where people have actually fallen off with these. Ski patrol do this quite a lot, like cutting cornices and knocking cornices off, but they'll actually put harnesses on and use ropes, so they're actually safeguarding themselves. So, like I said, I do this, but I'm very careful about where I do it.
Is it generally safer to go down the right because it's blowing left, or in terms of you're making a decision which side you want to go down because of the wind direction?
As far as knocking the
in terms
coming down off the mountain.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting one because now we've got some people who are skiers and some are snowshoers. It's going to be quite different because the windward side, maybe the snow's been eroded and it's quite shallow and things. On snowshoes that's fine, but for skiers and boarders that's probably going to be the worst place for us because we're really hitting rocks and trees and things. So, depending on how you recreate in the mountains will sort of dictate your terrain choices as well. You might walk up the top of a rocky ridge, whereas if you're touring, you can't go up there. So there are actually sort of differences in route choice between different activities. This side's going to be more loaded up with snow, but that's probably going to be where the deeper stuff is for skiing or riding. So, and that's the catch really is, as we, especially with skiers and riders, we want to get onto the sort of steeper, deeper stuff. But that means we could end up being in or close to avalanche terrain.
So I want to go down to the left because there's more snow, but if there's big cornices hanging off,
You'd want to go around it, and then maybe not come in underneath them as well.
okay.
Yeah.
But would that be a decision, like you might decide, well, let's cut some of these cornices off to go down because I don't want them falling once we go down, or is that?
Yeah, like I've knocked some cornices off just to see if it triggers the slide, and then we've sort of gone down it. But it could be that if you're wanting to knock them down because you think they might collapse on you, they're probably unstable enough that you probably wouldn't want to, unless you could clear them all, you probably wouldn't want to be going onto that slope. And again, cornices, like snow, they don't just, like say, snow's on a slope, it doesn't suddenly decide, oh, I've had enough being here, I'm going to go now. There's got to be some trigger to it. And it can be very subtle triggers like rise in temperature or one more snowflake landing on it. It could be someone skiing or riding on it. So, for the cornices to collapse and the slope to slide, something outside's got to happen. So, is there is there natural triggering going on? And if it's not, if the weather's stable, is there someone walking around knocking cornices off up there? I should be considering that.
So let's say, somebody goes out and triggers cornices and tries to trigger an avalanche, and it works, so you get a bit of an avalanche. Is the terrain safe after the avalanche took place? That's a stupid question.
No, that's why I sometimes I have used them in the past, knocked them down. It's created a slide, and then we've actually skied down the.
You may have actually stabilised things.
Yeah. As long as there's not, we've got to just decide if you're going down there, could other slides come down and hit you? And if that's the case, then it's not safe. But the time we did it, we triggered a slide. They all avalanche, and we actually skied down the bed surface. So we used that as a way of getting off. But we were sure there was nothing else going to come in. Right. Good questions, folks. So this is in Rogers Pass. Avalanches occurred on this slope. It's quite a small slab. You can see a little bit of a side wall, crown wall, just up in here. So if this was the leeward slope, the wind's been blowing kind of sort of left to right, so building up snow in this area. If we didn't, if the avalanche hadn't occurred, you can actually see quite a lot of wind effect up here anyway. So on those first photographs, we looked at the wind etching, so we've got these effects in here. So straight away I've been looking at going, wow, it has been pretty windy up here. So first of all, how has that affected the stability of the snow? And also for skiing or riding, it could actually make it kind of challenging as well, because it kind of could be awkward to be skiing in. So that's an effect there. There's another one in here. These little features in here. This is called Sastrugi. Don't worry if you can't remember the name. It's Sastrugi, kind of a strange one. But more importantly, it's actually telling me that wind has been blowing. The wind's been blowing in this direction, and these steep little faces are facing into the wind. So if we've got the snow like this, the wind's blowing and it's eroding snow, and this face is kind of being eroded back as it blows the snow somewhere else. And that ties in with the fact that there was a slab accumulation.
So you'd be able to tell by the crown if it was more blunt and smooth, that it's a little bit of an older, or if it's a fairly sharp edge and the debris has gotten some shape to it rather than just a wind blown.
Yeah. So this one looks like it's probably triggered by these people actually. And they've just been skiing across the bed surface. Because if you look, like this hasn't been covered up by anything else, and like you said, the crown could be sharp.
Yeah.
Saying that, if it's been cold and hasn't snowed, it could be a few days old as well. It's in the sun, so this is the aspect in relation to solar effect. So if it's on in this hemisphere, this is for South Africa, in the northern hemisphere, north-facing slopes, northeast, northwest, but north-facing slopes. Not going to be getting any sun, or much sun. As such, the consistency of the snow may not change very much, very quickly. So if there's weak layers in there, those could persist in there. For a skiing or riding standpoint, maybe that's actually where the better skiing is, because it's more powdery there, but having to deal with perhaps different conditions than on the sunny side, which could have been affected by the sunshine. It's gone through warming, cooling phases. We end up getting crusts and things in there. So maybe there were instabilities, and those instabilities have gone, but now I'm faced with different things. And that could change even on one hillside that gets a bit of shade as opposed to something else that gets some sun. And also, I'd say this is a factor of the time of year as well. So right now the sun is not having as much effect as say in April. So slope now could have totally different snow conditions if it went back to it later in the season. Okay, so that's aspect, slope angle, big one as far as trying to decide is it avalanche prone or not. Where it says 30 to 45, that's kind of the normal range for dry slab avalanches. Now, avalanches can occur on slopes less than that, and also greater than that, but 30 to 45 is kind of the sort of ballpark numbers, and 38 degrees was kind of sort of the average of those. That was kind of sort of critical range. So, kind of see why, on low angle slopes, why we might not get avalanches. Why on steeper slopes, why is that less likely?
They don't hold the snow?
Yeah, so the snow slides off before it builds up too much. Doesn't mean you can't get them, but 30 to 45 is kind of the ballpark. But last year was, certainly for low angle slopes, was a real exception. We had a really unstable snowpack, particularly in the sort of in BC, and there was one avalanche that it actually, when I measured the snowpack, I had to go back and measure it like 3 or 4 times because I thought I got it wrong. Where the crown wall was 18 degrees. So I've never seen anything pull back to such a low angle slope, and it kind of rolled over. So the avalanche, most of the tension was further down, but actually the crown wall ended up being on quite low angle terrain, which you could have easily been on. So you seen a bit of that, Craig, as well?
There's a drill over it last year. Was that one on the lee side?
It was, yeah.
Okay, so it was a big cornice?
No, not even a cornice. It was definitely in the lee, but it was landing on a very weak crystal, which we'll chat about later as well. And there was lots of clues, stuff was going on already. Like we'd been there a couple of days, and we'd seen stuff, so we were very suspicious about it, but that was kind of a surprise to see such a low angle slope. So how do we go about measuring slope angles? So we can look at maps, figure out contour lines and scales and things like that. Looking at photographs and whatever. What it means by ski poles? Can we set the lights on a second? Full-time job there. But sort of ski poles is kind of pretty rough and ready, but what I use is, if I put my ski pole on the snow here, and then I put one on top, and this one's touching, then that slope angle is 45 degrees. Yeah, so I can kind of go along, okay, well it's 45. And then what I've done with mine is I've just got, just kind of calculated, measured the length and calculated some angles. And I've put a piece of tape on this one. If I put it there and there, then it's 30 degrees. Yeah. So I can just kind of go along. If it's starting to get close to 30, then I might actually get an inclinometer out and a more accurate way of measuring it. So it's pretty rough and ready, but it's pretty quick. It works pretty well. So what do I mean by inclinometer? So you can buy specific inclinometers, but we all need a compass if we're heading out in the backcountry. And if you spend a bit more money, you can actually get an inclinometer. So this is a weighted arrow. And you just measure off the slope angle on here. So this was 36 degrees, so it's well in the sort of critical range there. The only thing I don't do is I wouldn't put the compass straight on the snow like this, because you can kind of push one end in quite easily. I usually put a ski pole down, or better still, an Avalanche probe, and that'll give you more accurate. So who needs a compass? Christmas is coming. Christmas card list.
Is that your compass?
Sorry?
Is that yours in the picture?
No.
Huge bubble in that.
Yeah, it looks like mine. So, we'll do a bit of this tomorrow. And to start with, I often find people that they're going to be quite a long way out, but it's actually one of these things you can actually get the hang of it pretty quickly. So what I suggest, if you're intending to, what I suggest is particularly if you're a skier at Ski Hill, is if you've got an inclinometer, just go around and measure a bunch of different slopes there. First of all, it's a good way of, it's a good excuse if you fall over. Just say, oh no, I was just lying down to measure the slope angle. The other one is, if you're familiar with the ski hill, say it's sunshine or something, and you know, like the angle delirium dive, and maybe the divide chair. So if you're in the backcountry, you go, well, this is steeper than the divide chair, but it's not as steep as delirium dive, so it's got to be around about 28 degrees or something.
So if you, now you know what the degree is of the slope you're thinking of going on, is there, like, online, would they tell you that there's been more slab avalanches above this degree? They don't tell you what degree the avalanche is?
No.
No, they're just, it's kind of too complicated to go,
right.
It's 37 degrees or whatever. You'll just make an assumption that if there's widespread avalanche activity, any terrain, so it could be like we said, 30 to 45. What they will do though, sometimes is they'll tell you if it's happening on slopes less than that. And they were doing that last year. They were giving warnings that.
I'm just trying to think of what you would do now that you know that it's 36 degrees.
Well then,
but do you have to factor everything else in, and then know this, or know this first?
You got to factor everything else in. So, if it's 36 degrees, it's steep enough to slide, but then how many anchors are on the slope? What aspect is it?
Yeah.
Maybe the wind's.
Because like you said, there's that 18-degree one. I mean, anything could slide depending on the conditions.
Yeah, and that was a factor down to the direction of the wind had been blowing on it as well. And fortunately, we don't get those conditions all the time, but that was a kind of like I said, I've been doing this quite a long time, and that was like, wow, you could have easily gone on that.
Oh yeah.
And not realised. That's just, that's the way it is actually. That's kind of the fascinating thing about this whole thing, is 20 years on, you can still get surprises like that. Coming to the shape of the slope. So we sort of, on that list here, we got cliffs and bowls and chutes. So let's just sort of go into a little bit more detail about convex and concave. Yeah, someone's used it. So, as far as convex, concave, just sort of a little bit of chat about that. So this is
concave. Whatever.
I just think about a cave going into the hill. That's the way I remember it. So that's our slope shapes, and then we'll add some snow to that. So, first of all, important principle to realise is snow is always moving down slope. So if it's on the roof of this building or on your car or whatever, it's always creeping down slope, and that might just be a millimetre, anti-gravity, millimetre a day, and it kind of depends on temperatures and what's holding the snow there. So in the mountains, it's all creeping down slope. So with a convex slope, A truly convex slope would have to be, there'd have to be a finish in a cliff here, otherwise it's, you know, if it goes into a valley, there's going to be a concave feature. So if there was a cliff there, then you can see that if you're creeping down slope, there's nothing holding it up here, so there's going to be a lot more tensions and in that snowpack. And often you'll see these sort of tensions appear, you know, maybe as crown walls up in this kind of region. So this effect. In a concave slope, there is some support down here because it's kind of compressing down onto this. Yeah. So the physics of these two slopes, there's a little bit of difference there. But the important thing with this is, you know, don't go away from this class going, well, Steve said convex is dangerous, so these must be safe. That's not it. Yeah. It's just the fact that the physics of it will dictate that in a truly convex slope there's going to be a bit more, there's going to be some more tension forces. And a good example of that is, you know, what is that slope in the photograph there? What shape is it?
At the top it's convex.
It's both, isn't it? Yes. It's convex and concave. So the fracture up here is at the convex. And if you measure this, you know, maybe that's around about, you know, sort of 30 to 45 range, and up in here is going to be a bit less. But then we've got a concave support in here, so we've got a bit of both. I'd say the skiers that triggered that, you can see that they came in there. I bet they were really surprised what happened there. Not a very big avalanche, like more consequence of being embarrassed, you know, being caught in it than buried. But quite a small slope in which you think it's pretty small, so really, like, is it going to avalanche? And I bet they were really surprised. So again, I don't know the history of this, but I'd be guessing that there was a really unstable layer in the soil, which we'll talk about layers and things later. So, you know, it's convex, but it's also concave. Okay, so maybe something else we can discuss here is, you know, how we negotiate a slope like this. So if we were concerned about it and we wanted to sort of traverse this slope, you know, say where would we want to be out of harm's way then? Say going across the top of it or something. So whereabouts here?
No, above that.
So we'll have a happy face, well away from where it steepens up. Okay, so we're back from where we think it might fracture. As far as the concave slope, like in all my years of mountaineering, I've never seen a slope like this. It's always got to finish somewhere. It doesn't just disappear in midair, and sometimes it'll finish with a convexity at the top there. And then if the wind's been blowing this way, then maybe this thing's got a cornice that's developed on it as well. So we have to sort of deal with that. So again, where would it be? Happy face somewhere back in here, perhaps. So like I said, cornices have this tendency to break, you know, much further back. So it could break back at this sort of angle, or it could snap back to there. And even, you know, even where you think you're standing on rock, it could actually kind of lever further back in there. So as far as travelling, you know, close to cornices, how can I decide whether I'm standing on a cornice or on the ground? Because that's obviously important, isn't it?
Probe.
Yeah, so I could get a probe and I could do a bit of probing, so I'm hitting the ground there.
Is your probe going to trigger the break off of a cornice, or is it small enough not to make much difference?
I guess if you were doing it out here, so you're like, oh yeah.
But if you probe
it's gone right through, then you'd run back in there.
If you see air below, you're on.
Sorry, just to go back one step, you've got those weakening, at the top of the convex slope, you've got those weak points that might show up as cracks or something. Do you, on a concave slope, do you get little pressure ridges or something at the bottom where the snow's building up? Can you see that?
Yeah, don't often see that, but you probably would get some sort of like compressed, where it's pushing up like that.
Is that a sign of something to be aware of? Or?
I've never really noticed that.
Okay.
That's a good point, actually. In avalanches, sometimes you get that effect at the bottom of it, where it's been pushing in.
There.
Yeah, kind of this sort of thing. But on a slow slope, I don't think I'm thinking that it's probably there's not enough movement down slope. You know, like what we're talking about is like millimeters or centimeters. It's not huge. And the way of thinking about like sort of a snowpack or any trees or bushes, just in there. And mountaineers will use ropes as well. You know, like if they're travelling along a ridge, they'll be roped up. And the idea is if someone falls off one side, jump off the other. Sounds fun for the scramblers here.
I'll cut the rope.
I'll cut the rope, yeah.
You're not gonna know sometimes whether you're walking out onto a corner or not. If you come up the backside, like I guess it's just instinct, if the wind's been blowing at your back, and you know most of the wind.
Yeah, like you might be suspicious there's a cornice there, but sometimes it's hard to tell.
Unless you walk, until you walk right out there, and like you said, you start seeing air.
There's some mountains that I haven't actually physically climbed to the top of, just because it's a cornice.
Right.
We've stopped 50 feet below the top.
I know in the summer, it was this summer, it was I think July 3rd, we went up Fortress, and we went from the Chester Lake side and then went over the Col. And yeah, we didn't realize how big the cornice was. We got down because we were thinking, okay, well, we know there's a cornice, so we're staying back, 15 feet or so from the edge. We knew there was a cornice up there. Went to this one spot and we kind of just snuck over the edge, and we got down about 200 feet and then looked back up and we're like, no, let's keep going. It was about 16 feet high and we were standing on it. So that surprised us.
Yeah. I think that guy that was killed in K Country this year.
Yeah.
Sounds
No
like he
kid.
stepped on it.
No
That
kid.
was like middle of the summer.
Yeah, August
Well,
on it.
Apple had a cornice on it all summer.
Yeah, it was a kind of unusual year for the length of time the snow stayed.
But then come out August, you don't stand on any snow, really.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, so that's dealing with the top of this. How about where would I be happy at the bottom of this?
Far away
Yeah.
as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe. What does it depend on?
Sunny side.
Everything on that board.
So yeah, some of these, like say in that picture, if I'd been like right at the front there of the photograph, where the ski tracks are, I'd be all right. So what dictates
How far away?
how far away I need to be?
The overhang.
All right, good. So how far I think the slope's going to avalanche. So a little slope like this, not very big, hasn't run very far. This is like 2,000 feet high slope. Then it could run a long way. So that first photograph we saw, you'd have to be up the ridge on this side to be out of it. So kind of dictated by the length of the slide. Now, in the alpine, that's sometimes harder to decide. But if it's running into trees, then we may actually have a bunch of trees in here, like 50, 60, 100-year-old trees. This is clear here, so avalanches have run there, but not to this. I'm going to mention this a few times, but got to be really careful with trees though. Is just because you're in forestry doesn't mean you're safe all the time. And sometimes, if these are 60-year-old trees, then this thing can have a period every 60 years, avalanches come down and knock these down, and then they'll grow back up 60 years on. So, in the mid-90s, Healing Pass near Sunshine, there's a group of people like they're in really mature timber, and really they didn't, they were just really unlucky. They'd stopped in this big sort of forestry area, and they hadn't realised they were right underneath a big slope up, and this thing came down and actually kind of caught them and destroyed. It was knocking down like 1,800-year-old trees, and killed 3 or 4 of them. So, really unlucky. Haven't really, they've been unfortunate because it was misty and they couldn't really see a road in there. So, the point I'm making here, I'll mention again, is just because you're in forest in trees, don't assume that you're always safe.
When you're on a small, even on a small convex slope, you want to know if there's activity, like if there's people skiing or snowshoeing at the top,
Yep.
and they could trigger a small avalanche, which
Exactly,
could
yeah.
take you up to the
Yeah.
top.
Yeah, so,
Know your surroundings.
when we sort of decide, could it avalanche, you think about are there natural triggers, but are there human triggers as
Well,
well?
you're short so far, that's what
Yeah, and certainly I've made decisions where I haven't gone onto a slope just because I've seen people walking around at the top and I don't know what they're going to go onto it or not. So. All right, good. So we talked about trees and the issue with trees or whatever. So a bunch of trees here. They could have an anchoring effect in the snowpack, but again, a little bit later on we'll kind of explore the idea. It doesn't always mean it's safe, but out in here you've got this open slope. There's only like little bushes and things. So maybe these have been knocked down by avalanches. Maybe things happen there. And then the other sort of anchors we mentioned are rocks as well. The thing with rocks is, as the season goes on, then they may break up the slope in December, but come February they're all covered up, and now they don't have any effect on anchoring the snowpack. Trees are a little bit more reliable, but like I said, just be cautious about assuming that things are fine just because there's stuff sticking out of the slope. How big is the slope? So, what are the dimensions of it? And also, again, I don't know the history of this, but the ski tracks here, coming in here, I'm kind of assuming that something did happen because there's kind of some weird ski tracks just in there. So, big slope here. Coming in here, what's above you as well? So you ski onto the middle of the slope. Perhaps there's cornices and things at the top. And then the other sort of factor is, what's the elevation of the terrain as well. We'll talk about this later, but when you read the bulletin, they sort of divide the risk hazard into 3 different elevation bands. So there's the alpine, which is this area. There's the tree line, which is kind of roughly around about 1900, 2000 meters. And I kind of tend to think about a little bit higher than that, a little bit lower than that for the tree line. And then everything else is below tree line. So why are you going to get different hazard ratings at different elevations? Like, what are some of the factors? Temperature differences. So often it's going to be colder higher up. Sometimes that doesn't happen if we get inversions, where it's actually warmer higher up.
No anchors in Alpine.
Good, yeah. So we don't have forestry up there, so we don't have things that are going to help anchor it. So the terrain's going to be more open. As such, the snow's going to drift around more because there's less trees to stop it drifting as well.
More wind.
Yep. So often it's going to be windier.
More sun.
Yep. So more sunshine. That may be counteracted by a colder temperature. But if it's warm everywhere, then perhaps the trees act like a little bit of shade as well.
Would it be a little more humid below the tree line?
Yeah, particularly down near creeks and things like that. Yeah. Then the other one is it's going to be more snow. It's windier, but also it could be snowing in the Alpine, raining below tree line. So you're getting greater quantities, maybe being blown around more drifting, and so on. So often when you're looking at a hazard forecast, it'll often be a bit higher in the Alpine than below tree line. That's kind of the way it usually goes down. At the moment, it's kind of moderate, low hazard. Sometimes it'll actually flip around though. Every year, sometimes the hazard actually is not too bad in the Alpine, and then elevated in the tree line or below tree line. And we'll talk about why that happens a little bit later.
So in that picture, on the left, you see that double ridge. Now, the wind we're blowing left to right. The worst spot right now I see would be just outside the shadows on the left. See that double ridge there?
This one?
So the wind's blowing left to right.
Yep.
So it's going over the top of those ridges and piling up just up on that shadow part.
Yep.
So that would be, if you look at it, not a good place to be, maybe. Or the worst spot in the picture.
Yep, for sure. If it's, the wind's been blowing. This bowl is huge. When it does go, it goes all the way down into the valley floor. So this is in Rogers Pass, so the road is running through here. The hotel's down in the valley there. Cool. So then we move on to the next row, snow stability tests. So in a moment we're going to talk about specific shear tests. That would be where you get a shovel out and maybe a snow saw. We'll do some of those tomorrow. But there's a whole range of things that will tell me that there's instabilities in the snowpack. And a little test like this slope is only about as high as this room. I guess there's a bit of consequence here. You get wet, but at least you're not going to go off like several thousand feet. Do you think that's pretty relevant? What's happening?
Oh yeah,
Like,
it's very.
you know, these are crown walls in here. So we're actually getting slabs to
You can
release.
see layers.
Yeah, getting slabs to release. We were just walking along, giving it a boot, and we'll be into the creek. And this is Rogers Pass. It's just near the hotel, and it's on the way up to a pretty popular ski touring area. Already 20 or 30 people have been past there without doing any of these tests. So they missed some amazingly informative, like some crucial information. Didn't take us any time to do it. It's literally 10 feet off the track. And
So is that old crown, that's an old one, sort of behind you,
we
right?
just
And
we
then you
just
went
started
to
it.
Vernia? So that's what it looks like, it doesn't even look like that's an old one.
No, that was kind of like
Okay.
5 seconds old. So we were suspicious that things would be going on in the snowpack just from what had been happening with the weather, but this is a real fast test. It's like, and like I said, you can do it on little slopes like this. If you're getting that happening, then it's, well, that's like the biggest clue, avalanche activity. So there's a whole range of those, walking along a little slope. It might be just with your hand, just digging down in the snowpack and kind of seeing if you can get one layer to slide on another. It might be using a ski pole just to push down into the snowpack so you can feel different layers. Like with ski pole tests, how many of those can you do in a day? Hundreds, thousands. You know, every time you push it in there, you kind of sort of feel what's going on. We'll look at some of that tomorrow as well. So those are all the little tricks I used, like real fast tests, as I'm moving around the terrain. So I kind of encourage my students to be sort of Sherlock Holmes out there. You know, if we need to, you're kind of looking, going off the path, digging around, probing. I love seeing that in a course I'm running. It means people are really sort of getting in it and they're trying to investigate things themselves.
So what did you do here, like after these guys triggered this, we closed the area off?
No, so this is all backcountry, so basically...
Oh, you said it was close to the hotel.
Sorry?
I thought you said it was close to the hotel.
It was, but it's still backcountry. Yeah. So it was a good question. Is like, what do we do with the information? Then we were just very conservative about where we went that day and the rest of the week actually. So we were not going into avalanche terrain, skiing low angle stuff, using trees and bridges and things. And then you might stop, get your shovel out, do a bit of pit work, and again we'll have a bit of a dig around tomorrow. There's a few interesting things to look at in the snowpack. Various tests. Again, we'll probably run through a couple of them tomorrow, at least one of them. In the books we gave you, there's kind of describes them in a bit more detail as well. One of the ones we might do if you're a skier or a snowboarder, or even it's relevant to snowshoers can do this, just change the size of the block, is using a piece of cord and some probes, you just cut out a block. This one's a ski block, so it's 2 meters wide. And then someone comes along and starts putting weight on it, so you step onto it, jumping on it. And the more weight you put on it, eventually, if it doesn't release, then that would be the sort of stable end of it. We'd be giving those a number, so if it fails while you're cutting it, it'll be 1, but the back end is a 7. So if you ever read the bulletins and they talk about, they've done this is called a rouge block or a ski shear test, you get it a number, then get a bit of an idea of the stability of the snow. We'll be doing a few of those tomorrow for sure. So we talked about this, kind of coming back to the bullseye. So cracking in the snowpack. Again, this was, I just walked out. It could be on snowshoes or skis, and then my buddy just came in above, and we were just getting this big, the slab breaking up, and these shooting cracks appearing. And again, that's really significant because I think something's going on in the snowpack that's not good. If you're heading up a hill and you do like a kit turn or you're turning around something, it may be on that corner where it knocks the piece of snow into the one the track you've already made. So big clue for sure. Don't have any. It's kind of hard to get a photograph of one thing, but this is kind of the after effect of one thing. This was a couple of years ago, and we weren't following the regular track. We kind of went off and made our own track. And every 30 or 50 meters, whoever's in front, the whole curve where you actually physically drop like a centimeter. It's like, ooh. My first reaction is I kind of look around to make sure I'm on like flat and nothing's happening around there. But like Craig mentioned, it's actually the first part of what happens in an avalanche is actually a failure in a weak layer in the snowpack. And then the effects we can see here is all around us, everything on any little steepening or roll, everything was sliding off. So again, these cracks, these tensile cracks in the snowpack. And again, that was like we didn't go onto any steep terrain that day, and we avoided making sure we weren't underneath any steep terrain. So you've got a big instability in the snowpack. So in which case we need to go to terrain that's not going to be avalanche prone.
So I've seen that a lot in the spring, but is it common?
Often early season you get a lot.
Okay.
Like we might experience some of that tomorrow if we can get to a place that already hasn't been wolfed by groups. Because once it's, if a group's in front of you and they're doing that, and then you're following their tracks, you're not getting that information. That's kind of why I encourage people not to be lazy all the time. Like I am, like I'll follow someone else's track, but every so often I'll go out and get a feel of what it's like and then come back in.
I did a trip a couple of years ago up to Twin Lakes. There was 4 of us, and I stepped off the trail. This was right in the meadows. And I just stepped off, and I went right up to my chest in snow. I thought I was going to drown.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how compact.
Oh yeah, there was no base to it, no base whatsoever, just straight down to my chest.
Yeah. Sounds like a rocky snowpack.
Yeah.
There was no snowpack. I thought it was water actually.
Alright.
Does it generally feel crusty mostly when moving happens? Doesn't matter?
Yeah.
No,
There's
no.
sign or...
No. Really, if you dig down in the snowpack, you'll find some weak layer in there. We'll talk about the layers often.
So one thing that's different than punching through the snow pack.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you might be walking on the snow and it feels a bit hollow, a bit sort of drum-like. You'd be suspicious about that as well. Might probably want to have a dig. Maybe that you might find it's quite hard snow up there and it's soft underneath. That's where you're getting that noise from. But one thing's definitely snow. You might actually see cracks appearing, occurring around you as well.
How do you feel about walking over the lakes in the winter? Because I've done it a few times and I found them really not frozen.
Yeah.
Clean snow off. I had a suspicion, and then you'll see water. Slushy water.
Water and ice. And
Yeah, you see water and ice and snow. It just seems to build up.
Yeah, sometimes the water will sort of flow through the yard.
Yeah, it just don't seem to freeze the lakes.
No, like if it was clear of snow, then it would freeze better, but the
Yeah.
snow's insulating it.
I think this year will be a year like that because we never got much cold weather and we got all this snow in one shot, right? So a lot of the lakes out there are probably not as good as you think they would be. So be careful this year because it's...
Well, actually, we did a trip, 2 years? No, last year. I actually went through the ice. There was 4 people went over it before me, and a couple bigger than I was, and I went over, and 1 foot went right through the ice, right down to my knee.
This year,
Yeah, I think take care for sure.
I got a question about these lakes. If it's a frozen lake and you're in, let's say, in the middle, and if an avalanche comes down the slope, could eventually break the ice and take you? Or is
It can do. Like, it's going to depend on the size of the avalanche, like the angle it runs out at, and also the ice as well. But haven't read about it happening here, but certainly when I was in Scotland, these two guys were caught in a slide, and it went down onto the ice, and then actually the weight of it broke the ice. Amazingly, what happened is when it cracked, when the ice broke, where it opened up, these two guys appeared. And they were like, they exposed their heads and actually saved them. Because the ice, the snow did that, which is amazingly fortunate for them. And actually, I think it took them like 3 or 4 hours to dig themselves out, because they were kind of stuck in it now. One guy had to dig with a compass. And then they walked across the ice and actually fell through the ice and fallen. They should have bought lottery tickets that night.
And also, convex hills doesn't accumulate cornices because it's not in a picture.
Kind of. It depends a little bit. Like if this is steep enough at the top, you might get a cornice in there.
But no, not usually, or not usually. It's not common, or
it depends on the angle there. It might, if it just rolls over, then the snow actually it's not sheltered enough and just keeps blowing down there. But if this was, you could have quite a steep convex roll like that, and it could develop a cornice up there.
So it's not necessarily an indicator of the shape.
Sometimes
if you notice a cornice means it's most likely going to be concave. Then.
Well, no, like where the cornice develops, it's not going to develop in here. It's going to be some sort of convex feature where the cornice is developed. But like in a smooth slope we had before, it was convex, but often it needs that sort of critical shape where the snow is actually sheltered from them. Because if it just is like this, then the snow just blows down it.
Okay.
But it could actually, with time, it could change its shape. So it might be like that, and then it builds up, and then it starts forming a cornice.
All right.
Don't have any photographs of past weather, but that's kind of sort of the point about this is before you go out, so you're planning next weekend, then you're monitoring the weather, seeing what's happening. But also, as you're travelling around that day, you're looking for, you're monitoring the weather as well. Is it snowing? What's the temperature doing? What's the wind doing? And then going back to that scenario we talked about, you're at the top of the slope there. Is it snowing? How hard is it snowing? Has it been snowing and now it's starting to rain? Because that's going to have a crucial effect on the snowpack. Which way is the wind blowing? So it's the slope you're going on to in the lee or the windward side. And even, amazingly this is in Scotland, so we have snow and blue sky. didn't happen that much, but even on clear days, it could be a day like today, you're driving into the mountains and you can see snow blowing off the ridges. So it's calmed down in the valley floor and yet things are changing. How is that affecting where you're going? And then we sort of talked about this earlier, this sort of rollerball or silhouette effect. So another piece of gear I'd sort of say would be a bad thing to have in the backcountry is a good thermometer. So not necessarily one of the little keychain ones, but actually you can buy mercury thermometers or digital thermometers. And knowing, getting a sense of whether there's a rise in temperature. So if it's gone from -10 to -5, that's something we should know about. If it's gone from -5 to +5, then that's really critical. But sometimes when you're exercising, it's hard to tell if the temperature's changing just because you're sweating. But like I said, something I look out for is just maybe this wasn't happening, and then suddenly we're starting to get some pinwheels or rollerballs occurring. So that's what's going on with the temperature. Often it's an indicator that things are rising. So a couple of things there. Knowing how to sort of measure the temperature, but also a little subtle clue that nature's giving you. How are folks doing for concentration and breaks? You okay to keep going for a while? Or?
I'm great now.
We've already talked a lot about cornices, so this is kind of on the sort of combination of the terrain, snowpack and weather. And now we come down onto the sort of the miscellaneous line, so this is kind of all the things we need to sort of consider. So sort of look at the Avalanche bulletin. And, it's going to take a little moment to load up here, so a little bit slow. So where do you get the Avalanche bulletin from? What's the, anyone know the website address? Sorry? Yeah, avalanche.ca. That's in your, that address is in the back of your backcountry Avalanche book you got as well. So this is, they're based in BC, but they cover kind of Alberta, BC, mainly sort of like the sort of southwest corner of Canada. There's actually talk about trying to set some stuff up on the east coast or Quebec as well, but mainly a lot of it is concentrated in this area and out to the coast. So this is the site. If you're not familiar with this, definitely you want to get onto and have a look at. Lots of really good information. So not only the bulletins, but also trip planning, links to weather sites. It's got some of the training courses that they do. So these courses, but also if you want to sort of take it further, particularly if you're getting into maybe sort of professional side of outdoors, so ski patrolling or guiding. The CA do sort of level 1, level 2, level 3 courses, and to be a full guide, you need to have been through the first two courses. They're all the way up to a week. There's modules of them, but sort of 7 or 8 days for the first one. So like I said, it's a bunch of really good info here. There's online courses, but just we're talking about now is bulletins, so just going into partners bulletins. And this information is the one for Banff and Kananaskis is written by the snow safety folks that work there. They get that information by going out on a daily basis, digging some pits, having a look at the snow, but they also get information from the ski hills, and the other areas get information from the cat ski operations, from roads department. So that's kind of the areas that they're forecasting for. So we're going to be looking at the Banff Yoho Kootenay forecast, and we'll be using that tomorrow. I guess the thing I sort of want to mention here, if you look, this is a big area they're forecasting for, but if you compare it with in here, this is a massive area in North and South Columbia. And so even within Banff, there's going to be local effects to the weather. So you could be in Canmore and it's not snowing, you drive up to Banff and it's starting to snow, and then it's puking by the time you get to sunshine or you cross the road, the divide there. So even within quite a big area, there's going to be geographically there's going to be differences in what's happening with weather. And if there's differences in what's happening with weather, that's going to affect the hazard forecast as well. So if they're saying, heavy snow and strong winds, and you get up in Canmore, it's like, nothing's happening. It could be all changing, sort of 20 minutes, half an hour up the road there. So, remember that when you're looking at the bulletins, and also sort of bear in mind that they were actually forecasting for the worst place. And you think trying to forecast for the North Columbias, when you go in there, it could be how wide, it's a big difference there. So, got the sort of various areas, Banff, Yoho, Kootenay. These bulletins are written in the afternoon, so folks will be out there today, flying around in a helicopter or climbing, whatever they do to get the info, and then they'll be writing the report this afternoon. So, I guess an issue with this is by the time we use it tomorrow, it's already 15, 16 hours since it's been written, so things may have changed with that. For Rogers Pass, Glacier National Park, that's actually put out in the morning. So if you ever go in there, it's right up to date. They write it like 5 or 6, I guess, starting 5 or 6 in the morning, so it's pretty fresh. So bulletins, they're kind of fairly generic as their layout. So the hazard ratings for alpine, tree line, below tree line. So this is for yesterday, today, and then into tomorrow. So looking at that straight away, not much change. What does that mean is going on with the weather then, or not happening with the weather? Yeah, so it's not. If you look at the weather, it's probably not warming up significantly, but it doesn't look like it's going to be windy or snowing, so it's kind of what the travel conditions are like. So lots of good info in here, and also gives you some ideas about temperatures and snowpack depths. So I'll tell you now, plan is to go to Bow Summit tomorrow. It's a long drive, but we don't really have enough snow anywhere else. So yesterday's pretty cool in the morning. So we'll talk later, but obviously going to need some warm clothes and stuff tomorrow. Not a very deep snowpack and not particularly strong winds yesterday. So homework tonight, if you've got access to the internet, is to see what they've written today or tomorrow, and then we'll review that tomorrow. But if you've already had a look, that would be some good homework tonight. Questions or?
We're talking about these pits, but what I've always thought, well, you haven't mentioned yet, if you do a pit, the only place you'll evaluate it is exactly that place where the pit is.
Yep.
You then move even
Kilometre.
50 metres, you don't know what that snow's like.
Exactly.
All you've done is evaluate that 2 square metres where you've done the pit.
Yep.
And actually some people have been caught, but they do a stupid thing, they dig the pit in the middle of the slope.
Yep.
Well, it wasn't safe, so
Yep.
they've actually caused them on Avalanche, in some cases very serious.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's like
and
really
we've
good
only
point.
examined the aspect of where you've actually done the pit.
Yeah. We'll sort of often review this tomorrow while we're talking about it. So as far as where you dig, it's the first rule, it's got to be safe, and it's got to be representative of the slope you want to find out that information on. And you're quite right, and we'll actually, it comes up in a minute, it's just because you dig a pit in one place, you could actually have quite different snow 10 metres away, 50 metres away. And it's kind of why we don't base all our decisions just on what we see in the pit. It's just another part of that puzzle, and how that fits into the big picture. And it's why, it's like the way I said, sometimes personally, I won't always do a pit every day, because I've got my head around what's going on by the big picture. But we'll give some tactics. Well, that's kind of is the tactic actually.
So the pit, you were hiking up a mountain in the dark.
In the dark.
So you didn't have any of these puzzles?
In the dark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like an alpine thing, descent.
Yeah.
So you have to just do the pit and go off that then? I mean, you have the previous knowledge before you went out with what the conditions meant.
Yeah, like if you're getting actually this part down here where it says visibility, that's that would be part of it. So in the dark, or if it was cloudy or misty, how much of this information would you lose if it's poor visibility or no visibility, like an alpine star? Quite a lot of it, like lots of the terrain stuff straight away, shapes, size, angle. So if you've done your homework, if it's an alpine star, then maybe you've gone out the night before or the evening before, and you've checked it out, and even started to make some judgments about it. If you haven't been there before, it's cloudy, then maybe you take a step back and it's like, well, I'm not sure about this slope, so I'm not gonna go there that day because I can't see it.
Wait, if you started up, it's like a 5-hour hike up and it snows for like ages, is that going to affect it, or is it not going to be enough snow in that sort of length of time to...
Oh no, it could easily, especially if you add some wind to that as well, it could easily be loaded up. But I guess the answer to your question there is if you're starting like that and you can't get a look at the terrain, then you should have done a ton of homework before, looking at maps and guidebooks and talking to people. And if it's avalanche terrain, then you need to be completely happy with the snowpack. And so if you're hiking up there and it starts snowing and you're aware it's windy, which way is the wind blowing right onto that slope, I can't justify going there because it's avalanche terrain and I'm unhappy about the snowpack now.
So what percentage would happen during the night time of the avalanches? Is there such a...
no, it can happen any time. So obviously, if it's a solar effect, it's warm, sunny days, that's going to increase as you get to midday and things. But if avalanches are being caused by snow and wind, it could be any time it's happening.
What about glissading? Are you going to discuss this issue? Glissading?
No plans to. So sliding down a slope?
Yes.
I think you just tie that in with like some of the things we're talking about with skiing or riding or walking down a slope. Like, as far as mountaineering goes, whenever I'm teaching mountaineering, I do show people how to do glissade, but I also tell them it's pretty risky activity as well, because you could hit, while it's sliding down, you could hit rocks underneath. I'll never glissade or get people to do glissade down unless they can see all the way down the slope, and hopefully they've already been up, so they know what the snow's like as well. So that's what I tell people.
Okay.
Just with kind of started talking about the terrain and snowpack. So when I'm trying to ask myself questions like this, I'm trying to come up with a yes or no answer to it. So if it's avalanche terrain, then yes, it is avalanche terrain because of the aspects and the angle. These folks use an idea like just traffic lights idea, so that would be a red light if it's avalanche terrain. So if yes, it is avalanche terrain, it's a red light, then what colour light do you need for the snowpack to justify going in there? So it is avalanche terrain, you've got a red light for that. What does the snowpack need to be?
Green.
It needs to be green, it needs to be safe, so it can't slide. If it's the other way around, if it's very unstable snow, it's a red light for the snowpack, then what terrain do we need to seek out to be safe? Green. Yeah. And the weather can be a combination of that as well. So if it's snowing hard and windy and the temperature's rising, that'd be a red light.
Yep.
If it's stable and it's cool, the sun's not out, it's not snowing, then I'll be giving that a green light. So you can either think yes or no, or you can use that idea of traffic lights. We might throw that in tomorrow as well. Good questions. So then we get to weather forecasts. So again, this is before we head out in the field. So we looked at the bulletins, we checked out the weather forecast. And so, apart from May, who lives in Canmore, I'm not sure if anyone else lives in the mountains, but if we live in the city, we don't really know what's going on in the mountains. It's a nice day today, but what's happening in Canmore today would be nice. Yeah. But it could be snowing out there. So, we need to do more detective work. And even if you're living in Canmore, that's going to be different to what's happening on the Divide. And if you're planning to go to BC, then you're going to have to be a detective there as well. So, keeping up to date with what the avalanche conditions are, but also what the weather conditions are as well.
So if you're going out, tomorrow you're going on the eastern slope, and the wind's been blowing heavy from the west all night, that's definitely would factor in.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
And the western slope would get even warmer if it was going to be a warm day, right?
Yeah. So that might, and then if you look at the map or the guidebook or whatever, it says it's avalanche terrain, and you've got a lot of snow on it, then you're going to have to have heads up. You're going to have to figure out then, maybe that would be like, well, I'm not going to go there today. My plan B was go in the trees somewhere.
You say like they don't update, let's say it's Yamnuska, if everything happened late in the day and overnight, they won't have, what they wrote up for that day wouldn't be relevant.
Yeah. So the accuracy of the bulletins can it's often dictated by the accuracy of the weather forecast as well, for sure. And that's why you can't, you know, like if they said, oh, it's going to be blue skies and cool all day and it's snowing and it's windy, it's like, you know, things can be different now. Yeah. It's pretty rare, yeah. Can you ever think of them updating the bulletin? I think it's kind of too late, really, because they also, to base it on that, they need to go out and check it as well. So, unlike the weather forecast where you can update it, I've never seen it happening with a bulletin.
Yeah. The bulletin's a 3-day forecast, but they'll sometimes update it the next day.
Okay. If conditions change.
If things change.
Right. Okay.
So, bit of video. Maybe just let, oops. Give David a moment to come back, but this is kind of on the sort of usage of a slope. So in here you can already see it's been sled as high marking up on here. So probably by this time, this person's probably like, wow, it's probably pretty good to go. There's already been probably 10 tracks on there already. It could be that those 10 people had started sort of destabilising the snowpack. It may be that that was done in the morning and then the sun's out on the slope and that's an effect as well. And then we'll talk a little bit about what David was mentioning is, you know, you might actually get places which are worse, one place on the slope than the other. So. I turned the dialogue down on this because it's quite a lot of swearing. So you can watch it at home. Kids out around.
Oh.
So it's just coming down in here. You can actually see quite a lot of his buddies, or her buddies, sledding out of there as well. Over here. Big slide, top avalanche. What type is it? Slab, yeah. Kind of looks like another sort of like little slabs in here, which were triggered by this one running over it. So this is where they were sledding before, lots of rock in the bed surface there. Let's go back. It's always fun watching these. So this person definitely goes out of the tracks there, don't they? Actually, they're above the crown wall for a moment and then they jump back over it and back down it. But they're not going to stop that machine. And they may not have even been aware because of the helmets on. They probably wouldn't have even been aware until they come around it there.
Put in reverse, you'll actually stay up there.
Steep slope.
Yeah. Kind of wondered if I would have jumped off the thing. So what was going down, and here's kind of an interesting thing as far as safe travel and stuff. So these folks are all parked in here. You can see them to turn and get out of there. So that may have been a factor of, because they'd already like kind of false consensus because they'd used that slope already. And I think there's a sort of general rule there is, or as a rule there is, wherever you congregate should be somewhere that's not in the slope off. And that accident in Boulder Mountain was a classic case. Like so many people caught in that slope, it's unbelievable. There wasn't more fatalities there. That thing came down and caught, I don't know, it was a couple hundred people. It's like mind-boggling actually.
Was that speed of how the line was propagating? It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like instantaneous.
Yeah. So if you think about it, like it may not have worked, but there would have been a failure in the weak layer. And physically, what we see is the whole thing down. So it's failed in the weak layer, and then it all just slides off. So it's not like a ripping effect necessarily. It's just So it just,
So it drops and then just goes.
yeah, sometimes it doesn't even physically necessarily drop as well. It would do if it's really weak under there, but sometimes it'll fail and then it'll slide. We'll talk a little bit about that later. We just have the lights on again. So, and just folks need to take a quick break. 5 minutes? Yeah, 5 minutes. So get up, have a little bit of a stretch around. I'm not sure how the coffee's